Yes, that's right folks. In this video I'm going to show you how you can make bresaola. It's a stunning piece of charcuterie. Follow the steps and you'll end up with something like this. Right, let me show you how to do it. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be making a bresaola. Now this is a cured piece of beef. I'm using a wonderful 3.7 kilo whole silver side of beef. Now I got this from T-Base Services in Cumbria. Now they use locally sourced beef, so this is Cumbrian silver side beef. It's one piece and it's 3.7 kilos. I'm going to be curing it on salt. First thing I need to do is to salt the meat out, make sure it's got no fat on it, so it's a really nice lean piece of silver side, and then we can cure it. So here's our meat, all 3.7 kilos of it, £58.47. So this is not a cheap cut of meat. Let's take it out, and we need to prepare this to get it ready for curing. Oh, look at that, it's a super bit of meat. All right. Might just pop some blue gloves on while I'm doing this. So I'm doing this on a white chopping board. Don't get all worried about it being a white chopping board, guys. Colour coding for these chopping boards is only really in busy kitchens where you're likely to get a cross-contamination between different product. My boards are one use and then they're washed, so it's no real issue here. And it also provides a bit of contrast between the meat and the board, so when I'm filming it doesn't look odd. Okay, right, we've cleared that up. Let's crack on. This is our beautiful bit of meat. I mean, that is a stunning cut of meat. I'll just take some of this blood off it, because we don't want that. So I got this the other day. It's been sitting in the fridge just acclimatising. This is an absolutely gorgeous cut of meat. I don't need these strings on it because I need to take some of this fat off. Obviously, we're going to be curing this, and in order to cure it properly, we want that salt to penetrate through this. It's quite a thick piece of meat. Normally with curing times, we would be looking at 1 day for every ½ inch of thickness, plus a couple of days. Now, and that really works from all sides. So if we want to cut the curing time down and make sure that we get a good cure, we need to take the fat off. Also, with Italian charcuterie like this, we wouldn't ordinarily have it with fat on. I mean, this is typically a roasting joint, so it's got lots of silver skin and fat on it, just to give it a little bit of moisture when it's roasting. But obviously that's not something we're going to need, and all I'm going to do is very carefully take off as much of this silver skin as I can, and I won't bore you with that detail, but all you really want to do is try and get your knife underneath as much of it as you can. Try and pull it tight and keep the knife angled slightly up so you're not cutting too much meat away. It is inevitable you will lose a little bit of meat, but don't worry too much about that. We actually just want to try and get as much of it off as possible. There we go. So that is all our fat removed. We don't need that. That can go. I might just remove this. That's perfect. Kind of gives me a better shape. Right, don't worry, that's not going to be wasted. There we go, that looks a much more kind of uniform shape.
Well, I didn't waste this piece of meat here. I took all the sinew off it, sliced it really thinly, velveted it, and I had it in a stir fry, and it was absolutely delicious. So yeah, it wasn't wasted at all.
Just take these last few little trinkets off. So now, it was a 3.7 kilo piece of meat. Obviously it's slightly smaller now, so when we do work out the salt, we will weigh this first to get our measure, and from that we'll calculate the salt. Now I'll take you through that nice and slowly so you know exactly what we're doing, because we don't want anyone to be confused about curing salts. That is one of the critical steps in making charcuterie. You want to make sure that you get that absolutely right. We don't want it undercured, we don't want it overcured and too salty. Also, we don't want to use too many curing salts. We just want to use a little bit of nitrite in this, and nitrate, because we're air drying. We're using a Prague 2, which is a blend of sodium nitrite and potassium nitrate, and that gives us a long-term cure as well as immediate protection. And it also gives us that colour conversion.
So until I can actually use this small little offcut of beef, I'm going to hold it on vacuum and stick it in the freezer until I'm ready.
Okay, there's our beef. That's ready to go in the freezer. We'll come back to that in another project. Here's our meat. Now it's all been nicely trimmed, all the fat's been taken off, so it's no longer 3.7 kilos. Let's weigh it. Okay, it's 2.933. 2.933. Okay, so 2% of 2.933 kilos is 58.66 grams. Now that's 2% total salt, but we're going to be putting some Prague powder with this, and we're using Prague powder 2 at the rate of 2.5 grams per kilo. Now that works out at 7.33 grams. Now 7.33 grams, we want to deduct that from the 58.66, so we end up with 51.33 grams of salt, which is going to be going into the cure, plus the 7.33 grams of Prague powder. Now I like to weigh these sorts of salts out nice and accurately. So we have our salt here. Now you can be a little bit liberal with the salt when you measure it. So I'm going to be measuring this out. Now I want 51.33 grams, and it might look a lot, but you know, that's the measure. So 51.33, we've just gone over that fraction. There we go, we're right on it there. Okay, 51.3. So that's the salt. The next thing that we are going to put in with this is some Prague powder 2. Now, I used my smoked dust Prague powder 2. I've got some left over from a previous cure here, which I'm going to be using. And we want 7.33 grams of that. Now, we do need to be a little bit more accurate with this. So, I've zeroed my scales again. And we're going to go in and weigh 7.33 grams. There we go, 7.33. That is actually spot on. Let me grab the camera and show you. There you go, 7.33 grams. So that's all good. I'll mix this all together. Now, by far the easiest way to cure this is to put the meat in a vac bag first and then add the salt inside and all the herbs and spices and bits and pieces you want onto that meat. And that is exactly what I'm going to do now. First of all, once the meat's out the way, we can get rid of the board. We don't have to worry too much about that. So let's get this in the bag. This can be a bit of a challenge because it is quite a chunk of meat, I must say. Right, now that's on there, I'll get rid of that board. Oh. Perfect. There we go. Right, gloves off. Hurrah. So what we are going to do here is pop this in, this salt in, and we want to try and get it as evenly coated as we can. I'm not over worried about this particular step, and the reason I say that is because this is going to be in this bag for a long time. What will happen while it's in the bag is that this salt will draw out the moisture from the meat. As it does that, it's got nowhere to go. So what it will do is create a brine, and that brine will get everywhere. So the meat, although it might look a bit patchy with the salt on it in the first instance, as I'm doing this, as this over time progresses, that cure will become ubiquitous throughout the bag, and I'll show you that as the cure develops, and we'll visit this in a couple of days and make sure that what I said actually transpires. So that is the salt done. So we are going to be putting some wine in here as well. Like I said, we're going to be curing this with a few bits and pieces. So we'll just leave that to one side for now. Right, so got some peppercorns. Now there's about 2 heaped teaspoons of peppercorns there. I have got 4 bay leaves, but I will break those up in a second. I've also got some rosemary leaves, which I will break off the stem. You don't necessarily have to break off the stem, but these are fresh rosemary leaves, so they do come off quite easily. The reason I'm using fresh rosemary leaves is that they've got some really nice pungency to them, and they will impart the most amazing flavour to this beef. And because it's quite a large chunk, I've got about 5 sprigs of this stuff here. So we're not skimping on the rosemary. I mean, look, for me, it's just a journey out into the garden to pick this off a rosemary bush, but you know, it's not hard to come by, and rosemary is quite easy to get. Also, I have got some thyme here as well. So I'm just going to take that off the stems. And to be fair, right, you don't necessarily have to take this off the stems if you don't want to. The reason I say that is because when this is cured and it comes out the bag, we're going to be washing everything off the surface anyway. We're going to be brushing all those herbs off, and if there's any sticks with it as well, obviously we can take those off before we go to the drying process. So it's not 100% sort of, you know, you've got to clean the stems off. I just like doing it because I'm a little bit like that. So anyway, I'll get over myself one day, don't worry. Okay, so that's that. Last bit of stem out. I'm gonna just smash these peppercorns up, and as I'm doing that, it's also helping release some of those oils in the rosemary and the thyme, and that's where our flavour's going to come from. And I've been looking forward to doing this project for a long time, and when I did the update on the channel, I think it was a couple of videos ago, check it out if you want to see what we're doing for the next few months. I forgot that one of the questions I got on the channel was, when are you going to do a Bresaola? And hey, if you ask, you never know what you're going to get. So that's why I'm doing it now. But yeah, if there's anything you want to see on the channel to do with charcuterie, and we do all sorts of stuff here, by all means drop me a line. You'll never know, I might be inspired to do something for you. But check out that video of the updates that I posted a few videos ago. I think it tells you what we're planning with some of the meats we've got. We've got some really nice meats over the last couple of weeks, so they're all frozen down at the minute, and I'll be doing some projects over the autumn with those, and we'll get them up on the channel as soon as we can. If you're not if you haven't got the patience to wait for the videos to come out, I'm going to be starting to post a little bit more frequently on my Patreon channel, so do check out that, Coldsmoking Digital Cookery School. And if you want to support me in some of the stuff I'm doing, and you know, give me some inspiration as to some new ideas for new projects, then please do let me know and get in touch and we can have a chat. And you never know, I might be doing something that you've suggested in the near future. Right, don't forget that Q&A that I'm going to be doing pretty soon as well. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about me and the channel, and you've got some interesting questions that you want to ask about what we do here and you know how we came to be where we are doing what we're doing, then by all means drop me a question. Or if you have a technical question about curing or smoking or anything like that that you're not 100% sure on, or you want to clarify something and you know other people might benefit from that, then please do drop me a line, engage with the channel, send in some questions, and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And you know, hopefully we can get some resolution. Right, I've got my wine here. I'm not going to put too much of this in. One thing I would say, if you're going to be making charcuterie using wine, don't use a wine that you wouldn't drink. Okay, this is a lovely Sicilian red that we're using here. Look at that. I don't think I could have planned that. That's amazing. That went straight in there. Right. Yeah, so it's a Sicilian red. It's one that I would ordinarily drink. Don't use some cheap old plonk. You know, good wine makes good charcuterie, etc., etc. So we don't want to. Oh yeah, that smells really nice. I might just have to pause the video, get a glass and have a little sip of that. Right, here's our red wine. It is a Nero d'Alvo Sicilian grape, and just going to try a little bit. Oh, that smells absolutely gorgeous. Oh, rich, really nice tannins in that. Lovely plummy notes. That's very nice. You're going to like that one. It's very nice. Okay, so let us put about just under half a glass of that into our charcuterie. So just about half a glass of this wine is going to go into our bag. But before I do that, I just want to show you very, very quickly all that brine in the base. That's just beginning to start coming out. So in goes the wine. We'll get this zipped up, and this can go en cure for around about 10 to 14 days. Right, we're going to get this buttoned up because it's got a little bit of fluid in it. What I'm going to do is I just raise the vacuum machine just up a little bit so that we actually don't allow any moisture to pour out of this bag, and then I just place the bag on here like so and close it down. Now as I draw the vacuum out of here, you'll see the air leaving, but I don't want the fluid to just sort of jump out, because that will screw up the machine. So as soon as I see that fluid coming up, I'm going to cancel and then put a seal on this. Right, let's do it. Okay, so I think that's pretty much a lot of air out of there. We've still got a bit more air to come, so that's good. There we go, that's a proper job. Just wait for that to seal. Okay, let's have a quick look. We should have a seal all the way across there, which we have. The way I test the seal is to invert the bag like so. There we go. There we go, meat all sealed up. I'm going to write today's date on this because that's when it goes in, and it is the 20th of August. Okay, So I'm going to be looking at this for probably the 3rd or the 4th of September. Right, in the meantime, this can go into the fridge. It's got the date on it. We know that we need to revisit this by around about the 3rd or the 4th of September. And once it's cured, we can carry on and do the drying process with this. But what I would say, if once it's in the fridge, every day or two, go up to it, give it a bit of a shake and a shove and mess about with it. They call it overhauling, but basically you're just making sure that all that cure and all those flavours are getting around all parts of this particular piece of meat. Right, this can go in the fridge. We can forget about it until tomorrow, and every other day we're going to be revisiting this for about 2 weeks. Right, there we go, fridge. Well, our Bresaola has been curing now for 14 days, and it's now time to take it out of its curing bag, give it a pat down, get some of that moisture off it, and we're going to introduce it into one of our dry aging bags. But before it goes into the bag, we need to truss it, and I'm going to be using some butcher's string to do that. You can follow me down on the bench as I do that. So let's crack on, and we'll get the camera repositioned, and we'll do that. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is take this out of the bag. Now there is going to be some moisture in here, and that's absolutely natural, and I can tell you as I open that up, oh, the smell in there is sensational. So I'm not going to wrestle to get this out of the bag. I'll just use the scissors to open it up. So now we put rosemary on this. It's got bay, and that was fresh bay from my garden, fresh rosemary from my garden too. And I don't really want to give this a rinse. I want to just scrape some of this off, and we'll try and dry it as we go. We had some red wine in this as well, and that's really influenced the colour here, which is absolutely delicious. Oh, the smell. It's beautiful. Love using fresh herbs wherever I can. Absolutely delightful. Alright, I'll use some of this tissue to mop up some of that moisture, because that's going to get everywhere. And then what we'll do is we'll turn that out onto the bench. Once we've got rid of that, now if you remember, this top side joint, sorry, the silver side joint that this is, came from T-Bay Services, from local Northumbrian or Cumbrian stock. It's got the most lovely colour. So we used an EQ cure for this, and that means that we can't really over cure it. So you could actually, in theory, leave this in the curing bag for 2 weeks, as I've done, 3 weeks if you wanted to. If you're going away on holiday and you wanted to leave it, that's absolutely fine too. I'm not going to harm it. There we go. So that's all brushed off. We can get rid of this. I'll have a minor clear up. We're going to truss this with string, and I'll start in the middle. Don't want to go too mad with this. Sorry, let's go this way. That's my butcher's knot. It's essentially a figure of 8 on the bite, and it gives it a bit of shape. I don't want to cut the meat by doing this. I just want to bring it into a nice round. I don't want it to dig in too much, otherwise it makes it really difficult to get off. We'll just tie that off there. There we go. All the way around. I don't know why. Force of habit, really. You want to keep them about 2.5 centimetres apart. or an inch in old money. There we go. That's it. Just to give it a nice shape. Put a little half hitch in there. Right, I'll do the rest of these and then we'll come back. Okay, there is our Bresaola, all nicely trussed. It's now time to put this into the dry aging bag, and that is a pretty straightforward process. Now I'm just going to dry my hands and have a bit of a clean down. Now I'll tell you the bag I'm using for this particular project. These are dry aging bags. You may know them in your country as umai bags, but they're made by Tubelin Company in Denmark, and they are not necessarily a plastic vacuum bag, but they are a processed film, and what they do is they allow moisture to pass through them. If you want to know more about these, there is a video on my website explaining exactly how these work, and you can have a look through the contents of that, and it should give you an idea into their use and how we apply them to dry aging meat without the use of one of those really expensive cabinets. So it's going to go into this dry aging bag, and it's going to be in here for a little while. Once we get this in, we'll weigh it to make sure that it will be losing enough weight. Now, for a piece of meat like this, we want to lose around about 30% of its weight for it to be dried sufficiently. But, you know, meat tends to dry from the outside in, so it will be very, very dry on the outside and still quite wet on the inside. So after that process is done, we do what's known as an equalization step, and I'll talk you through that when we get to that stage. But it is quite an important stage, and if you're not familiar with using these dry aging bags or equalizing meat after you've cured it, then it's a very, very important part of the process that you need to pay particular attention to. Right, so let's see how we're doing. There we are, and so that is a 200 by 400 dry aging bag, and we've literally got all the meat in there, and that's absolutely rammed out. We're not going to get any more into there. Now we've got to put a vacuum on this, but before we do that, we've got to clean the lip. Obviously any grease or anything contaminating this bag at the end is going to prevent us from creating a seal. Now, when you do pull a vacuum on these bags, that vacuum does tend to disappear after a couple of days. That's perfectly normal. The whole idea of the vacuum is to give you a good contact between the meat and the bag so that it can do its drying process. So that's quite a normal step, that's quite a normal thing to witness, but I will show you how we manage that whole process later on in the video. Right, so we want to draw a vacuum on this. To assist us in that process, what I've got is something called some vac assist strip, and that really is there just to help pull that air out. Obviously we're using one of these snorkel type vacuum machines which will just suck the air out of this bag. Now that doesn't always create a very good vacuum, but we use this piece of film here as an assist, and we just pop that into the bag. This just goes in the lip of the bag, and we just bring that bag up to the vacuum machine. We just have this sticking out the end like so, and we want to draw a vacuum here. So we'll close this down, lock it in place, and we're going to draw a vacuum out. And you can see that that's pulling a vacuum already. That's looking really good. We'll seal that. Now, I'm going to go through another cycle and seal that again, so we get a double seal. I'm going to cancel that. Right, I'm going to leave it to cool down a bit. If you open this up too quickly, sometimes you can drag apart and melt the seal, and it will just pull it apart and it won't look good. So we'll just open that up nice and gently, pull it apart gently, and you can see there a perfect seal. Now, look, just as I said, so it's melted through. If that happens, don't worry, that should still hold. Okay, so that's still holding a vacuum there, which is great. I'll show you another technique in a second, how we can avoid this vacuum or this plastic layer, this dry aging layer here, because moisture will pass through this. It's a special bag, it's not an ordinary vacuum bag, just remember that, okay? But there's another method I use to hold this in close proximity, and that is by using meat net. But I want to make sure that this bag, if the vacuum does go, doesn't leave the surface of this meat, because that's quite important. And the way I do that is by applying some meat net to it. Now, there's no pretty way of applying meat net. I've used several techniques in the past, but the one that I tend to adopt is the one where I literally pull this on manually, and it isn't a pretty sight. I'll just adjust this up a fraction so you can see me wrestling with this. It's not a pretty sight, but sometimes you can put this on a mandrel, and there are special applicators for putting meat net on, but I tend to use this because it's what I've got. There you go. Now that wasn't too bad. So check we haven't damaged the bag, which is great. We've still got the vacuum intact at the top, which is great. I'll just push that up. There we go. So that was, I'm quite impressed with myself there. So what we'll do is we'll just tie this end off here. That went pretty well, I've got to say. So why do we use this meat net? Okay, there's a couple of reasons. Okay, first of all, it holds a nice shape. Okay, it gives you that nice sort of circular shape, which is what you want from charcuterie when it's hanging, if you are hanging it, that is. But the other reason I like to use it is because it's elasticated, and as meat dries, it shrinks. And if you just have the string holding it, as that meat dries, you'll find that the string will loosen around the meat, and it's possible that the meat will lose its shape, and we don't want that. So that is why I tend to use this meat net, because it gives me not only the added benefit of knowing that it's going to be in contact with the meat all the time, it also holds it in a nice shape, and it looks the part as well. So we'll just put a knot in the top there. We're going to now weigh this, because we now need to calculate the meat weight that we want from this when it's finished. So we'll stick it on the scales. We'll wait for those scales to 0, and then we'll weigh that. Wow, I don't think I could have planned that, but that is exactly 3 kilos, 2,999. So that makes the maths nice and easy, doesn't it? Right, we want to lose 30% of this. So that means that's 900 grams we want to lose. So that's easy. This will need to weigh 2,100 grams or 2.1 kilograms. We want this to weigh 2100, and we'll put that as our target. We'll weigh this occasionally, so I normally would say weigh this every couple of days, just check that it's progressing, heading in the right direction. You will get this drying out quite quickly to start with. As the days goes on, the drying process usually slows down a little bit as the outer casing forms a sort of a barrier to further drying. That's perfectly natural. If you did let this dry naturally, it will dry from the outside, and it will what we call case harden if it dries too quickly. So we've got a technique for dealing with that case hardening later on in the process, and we'll show you how that works. That Bresaola is now ready to go into our fridge because we're using a dry aging bag. We don't need any specialist equipment like a dry aging cabinet. All we need to ensure is that this sits on a wire rack so that air can pass around the underneath of it and also get access to all parts of that meat. And we'll revisit this in a few days and see how we're progressing. So you can either hang this in your fridge if you have the facilities to do that, and then obviously you don't need a rack, or you can lay it on a rack in the fridge on a shelf, and it will be just as happy as if it was hanging. Right, well, here is our Bresaola. It's been in the fridge drying for 39 days and it is now at its target weight. Let me just turn this around so you can see it. It should be just around about 2.1 kilos. Look at that! Spot on!
So in my diary you can see I've been noting the weight of the meat, the total loss and the daily loss on the far right hand side, and that allows me to keep track of that whole drying process over the period of time it's in the fridge.
So this is now ready for the next stage. So what are we doing? Very simply, I want to arrest the drying process, and the reason I want to do that is because I can feel on the outside this is quite firm. But if I really squeeze it, I can feel in the center it's actually quite soft. So I want this to equalize. And the only way I can do it is by stopping this dry aging bag, which is under this meat net, from allowing more moisture to come out. And the only way I can do that is by putting this into a vacuum bag, drawing a vacuum so that that stops that process happening anymore. So let's do that, and you will see this will maintain its weight until such time as this equalizes. Now I'll be honest with you, all right, this can take 6 weeks, so this will be ready just before Christmas, I'm hoping. So let's give it a go, and we'll run a vacuum on this and we'll pop it back in the fridge. Okay, so that's done. Today's date is actually 25th of October, 25th of the 10th. I'm only doing this, I mean, you don't need to write the date on here. I'm just doing this so that I know how long it's taken, so I can tell you. Right, this will go in the fridge and we will revisit it hopefully in another 6 weeks. Right, back to the fridge. This really is slow food at its best. Okay, fridge. Well folks, after many days of equalising, this is our Bresaola. I don't know why I slapped it, but it just sounds great, doesn't it? All right, that's enough of that. Let's take this apart and see if we can take some slices off it. Let me take you down onto the bench. Okay. So that's been equalising. I even left it in its original dry aging bag, so we can take it out of this meat net, which I'm not a massive fan of, but they do their thing, don't they? Okay, so we'll take that out of there. That's great, and we can, yeah, we don't need that anymore. I will keep those actually, so we can just refer back to them. Let's take this out of the dry aging bag. Now, what I am going to do though, before I take this out, is pop some gloves on. Right, this Bresaola is a beautiful piece of Cumbrian beef. I've got this from T-Bay, I'm sure you can remember. And T-Bay as a services on the M6 in Cumbria. Oh, goodness me. The smell of that is just insane. Right. So what we're going to do with this, I'm going to cut this and we are going to take some slices. Okay, we've got a bit of light on the subject now. Let's take this apart and see what we've got. Right, so I'm going to carve straight down the middle here, right down here, and let's see what this gives us. Oh my God, oh my God, look at that, look at that. How amazing does that look? I mean, that is superb, isn't it? That is probably the best look that you could get from a Bresaola. It's lost all that hard edge. There's a little bit there, but nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Right, let's see how it tastes, shall we? All right. Now, I'm going to take a really nice thin slice here. Now, you can do this on your mechanical slicer. I do have a mechanical slicer and I probably will slice this on that, but I'm not going to torture you with doing that. I'll take some slices here. You want to take about 1 millimetre at a time. There you go. I mean, that looks amazing. Goodness me, they look lovely, don't they?
I'll be taking some slices off that Bresaola with my mechanical slicer in a separate video.
Okay, so I'm going to take one to taste now. Thank God for that, mate. I thought you were never going to ask. Oh, hang on, I'll present that one. That looks really nice. Let's plop that down there. Let's take one of these bottom ones. There we go. Right. Shall we taste? Why not? Let us do this. So, this has been, I mean, this is ostensibly your ultimate slow food. I mean, this has taken months and months and months to prepare. So let's give it a go, shall we? Oh. Oh wow, you can really taste all those herbs that went into that. That is stunning. I mean, it's still quite cold from being in the fridge, so really with any charcuterie you should allow it to come out of the fridge and sort of come up to temperature, really. Oh my God. It's not too salty. Remember, we EQ'd this. If you want to know about EQ, curing, I'll leave a link in the description to a video that explains all that. Oh my God. Ah. I mean, this is a good beef anyway. This is a stunning bit of beef anyway. doing this with it, well, I mean, that's taken it to the next level. I mean, that is absolutely amazing. Well, there we are. You wanted Bresaola, you got Bresaola. And here it is. Absolutely stunning bit of charcuterie. I'm going to be packing this up onto some gold boards and vacuuming it. I'll be freezing some of it as well. If you want some gold boards, I'll leave a link in the description. Anyone in the UK, we do retail pack sizes, so if you do this sort of thing at home and you don't want to buy 1,000, that's absolutely fine. We do them in much smaller quantities with the vac bags to suit. But there you are, Bresaola. Absolutely delicious. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a big thumbs up if you did, and we'll see you on the next video. You take care of yourselves, and I'll catch up with you then. Bye now. Bye-bye.